Hello and welcome to this week's video. My name is Anuska Taylor. So great to have you here. Thank you so much for joining me. And if you've yet to subscribe to my channel, please don't forget to hit that subscribe button. I create weekly videos on all things voice related, specifically aimed at professionals, business owners, entrepreneurs, anyone that really relies on their voice and they want to make the greatest impact when they speak. So today I'm talking about a very interesting topic, and it really is fundamental to my coaching and the direction and the approach that I take when I work with clients. And this is the idea of your habitual voice versus your true voice. Some other words for your true voice could also be your natural voice or your authentic voice. And that word authentic gets thrown around a lot, but I'm going to talk about today what my definition of that is and why it is so important as a speaker to connect to your true voice and really start to see the limitations of your habitual voice. So most of the time when clients come and find me, they are bumping up against the edges of what's possible with their habitual voice. They are realizing, and some people, it can take them a long time to realize the limitations, but they will start to see this voice isn't actually serving me. Maybe they struggle to project with ease. Maybe they struggle to speak with clarity with ease. Maybe they just find expression very, very challenging. And so they will find myself, and really what they are searching for, but they don't have potentially these words, is they're trying to access their true voice. And they are realizing that they're bumping up against the limitations of their habitual voice. So let's talk about, first of all, the habitual voice. We all have a habitual voice. I do too. And it's really about becoming very conscious and very aware of this voice. So this is the voice that's very much a product of our environment and our conditioning. Now, bearing in mind, our conditioning is really from 0 to 7 years old. This is why people will often say to me, but I've always spoken like this. I hear this all the time, but I've always spoken like this. Everyone in my family speaks like this. And that's absolutely true, because most likely you will be conditioned in a very similar way, conditioned by society, conditioned by your culture. Even different accents have certain conditioning around how people speak, how people use their voice. So you're going to just follow the herd. You are going to pick up that, and that's going to become what you believe is your true voice. But if there's any kind of limitation in that voice, then you know it isn't really your true voice. So we learn how to use our voice. We learn what is acceptable and not acceptable. As I say, this happens very young. So you won't necessarily remember, oh yeah, I remember when I used my voice in that way and someone told me to shut up and stop talking, or because it can happen in so many different ways, and I can't possibly cover every possible scenario. But most of the time, our conditioning around our voice is around shutting our voice down. And that will look like constriction, restriction, hiding, pulling the voice back into the throat, limited expression, limited dynamics, difficulty with projecting, difficulty expressing yourself with clarity. All of that, when you think about it, in some way you are hiding behind your voice. Now, this isn't conscious. You're not deliberately thinking, I know I'm going to hide behind my voice. This is just what happens. This happens to us all to a greater or lesser extent. So most of the time, as I say, the conditioning is really about, it's not okay for you to fully be heard and seen. So we need you to pull your voice back. Stop being so loud. Stop being so clear and powerful. Pull your voice back. Now, the other side of that can also be, because we all know people like this too, they have a very loud voice and they really struggle to speak quietly. But that's just the other side of the same coin, because it's really coming from that fear of, if I speak quietly, no one will notice me, no one will hear me. And again, this is really conditioning. This is all conditioning. This is the environment. And it's going to vary from person to person, depending on the environment you grew up in. Was it more appropriate for you to pull your voice back and hide? Or maybe in order for you to get your needs met, you had to be loud. You had to be the biggest voice in the room. But if you feel stuck in either of those, let's call them rooms, the quiet voice or the loud voice, then you know the conditioning is running the show. And this is really the differentiation with all of this. If you feel like you have to use your voice in a particular way, whether it's loud, quiet, speaking fast, speaking slow, limited expression, or being over the top with expression, you know that conditioning is running it. You know the ego is hooked in, because on some level, this way of using your voice is keeping you safe, is helping you to fit in the world. But of course, this is very, very limited. And this is where the true voice comes in, because the true voice is not afraid to be heard, but it's also not afraid to be quiet. There is no fear around the voice when we are fully embodied and present with this voice. So we may choose to speak quietly, or we may choose to speak loudly, but we can access all the colors, all the potentials in our voice. And this is really the authentic voice. And when I talk about authenticity, it's not about just swapping one persona for another persona. It's about fully showing up in a particular scenario, because every situation you're in is going to potentially require something different from you. I was talking to a client this week, and sometimes, you know, if we are standing on a stage, we might want to amplify our voice in lots of different ways. We might just want to bring a bigger version of our voice to the table or to the stage, versus if we're sitting next to someone, then we don't necessarily need to be quite so amped up. So it's really having the choice, and that is the difference. That is the main difference. So you're not afraid to speak in a particular way. You're not afraid to be expressive, and you can be expressive. Because for some people as well, they're like, well, I don't have a problem with being loud, but they actually find it very hard to get the voice out. So physically, even if consciously they're like, no, I don't have a problem with this, but physically, the muscles in the throat, in the jaw, in the tongue are like squishing around the voice and are not allowing the voice out. That's really the mind driving the voice. So this is the really big difference. And this is why it's so important, because as a speaker, as a professional, as someone that uses your voice, you want your instrument to be powerful, free, open, and expressive. And you want to have a choice as to how you use your voice. So if you perceive in your voice, and I've heard all of this many, many times, I just speak quietly, I just speak fast, I just find it very hard to be expressive, I just talk at the back of my throat, I just speak low. I hear these all the time. That is your conditioning. That's your ego talking. That is not your true voice. Your true voice is powerful, it's free, it's open, and it's expressive, regardless of accent. So you can access whatever colors of your voice you want to. So that is the difference. And it's, you know, it's deep work. This is why I say all the time, just doing vocal exercises will only take you so far. Because if your conditioning says it's not safe to be powerful and loud, it doesn't matter how many exercises I give you, on some level, you're going to put the brakes on. And there's so much going on when we speak. There's so many muscles involved. This is a full body instrument. So you can imagine how quickly and easily the voice can begin to shut down. And often I find with people, there are muscles really constricting and restricting their voice in ways they don't even realize until we start exploring the voice and really freeing and opening the voice. Sometimes it can be very obvious. I mean, an example I see all the time is people talking at the back of their throat. They don't know they're talking at the back of their throat. Their voice is just sitting here at the back of their throat. And you get that kind of croaky, raspy sound. But also, it's just a very sort of flat sounding voice as well. It's very, very hard to get anything from that voice. But again, that's just very conditioned. It's just a voice that's been pulled back, a voice that's hiding in some way. And you've been taught implicitly or explicitly, it's not safe to really be heard, whether it's culturally, whether it's in your family, wherever you've learned that. And as I say, all of this happens at such a young age, you're unlikely to remember the day when you were told to pull your voice back, but it will be cumulative over many years. So I hope that's really opened your mind to the difference and why the habitual voice is so limited. And the goal then with all of this is to create new habits. So you are then fully standing in your power as a speaker. And so you're creating new vocal habits, but from a very conscious, deliberate place, versus I'm just being swept along by my conditioning, by my environment, and bearing in mind, like they say, what 95% of our mind is unconscious. So it's a very, very real, powerful part of our mind that there's a lot we can do. And if you're not sure where you are, just watch yourself speaking, listen to a recording of yourself speaking, and just start to listen to your voice. Is this a voice that's really free and open and powerful and expressive? Or is this a voice that's hiding and is pulling back in some way, or constricted or restricted? Just as another point as well, because constriction doesn't necessarily have to be pulling the voice back. Sometimes I see this as well with people who the only way they can project their voice is to push and strain their voice. So there's a lot of trying to get the voice out. And again, that's still a habitual voice because the voice is still not free. So if there's any kind of restriction, constriction, manipulation in the voice, then you know that's some kind of habitual pattern that you picked up through your conditioning, and you can absolutely change this. There's so much you can do, and even just starting to bring awareness is going to make a massive difference. And then having the tools and techniques to bring the voice out so you can really start to repattern this and learn that it's actually very safe to express yourself, to allow the sound out, to move your lips, to move your jaw, to move your tongue, to allow the breath to kind of deeply power the voice. Then you really are in a position of true authenticity. So if this really resonates with you, I will put some links below on how you can work with me, but I would suggest if this is something that's of particular interest, schedule a 30-minute voice discovery call, because then those calls are really around me giving you some insight, me kind of awakening you really to your voice, opening your mind to your habitual voice, things that you may not have ever thought about, considered, or even be able to hear or feel in your own voice. Because this is the thing, when we've been doing something our whole life, what is actually not really serving us just becomes very comfortable. Even if it's not actually comfortable, it becomes uncomfortably comfortable. So we need someone externally to us to say, who's not in our head, to say, have you noticed that you don't move your lips when you speak? Have you noticed that your voice sits at the back of your throat constantly when you speak, for example? And then we can really start to explore that. And that's really the first stage of this process. Have this call, which is really going to give you some insight, understanding, and awareness in your voice. And then you can make a more informed decision. Is this a journey I want to go on? Because it is a journey, because it's so much more than your voice. Your conditioning is going to be directing every aspect of your life, but we can look at it through your voice. So that's why this work is so, so, so powerful. So thank you so much for watching. I'd love to hear your comments. If you've got any comments or questions, please post them below. If you enjoyed this video, please give me a thumbs up, and I will see you next week on my next video.